Kansas State running back DJ Giddens will be the best value in your Dynasty rookie drafts. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also read me at the 33rd Team. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You've seen her on Pro Football Focus on Yahoo. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. On today's show, we're going to be looking at Kansas State running back DJ Giddens, who, at least in my mind, is one of the more undervalued running backs in dynasty leagues in the NFL draft right now. Kate, one of my favorite things is you kind of get to block out some of the outside noise with these prospects and just sit down and watch the tape without really having any biases, right? So what did you see from Giddens when you watched the tape?
I see a running back that I'm a little bit enamored with, and I'm feeling pretty good about here, especially when you put that into context with like where he's going in, for example, dynasty startup drafts or dynasty rookie drafts. When we see the ADP coming out, obviously we're still early in the pre-draft process. We've got a month left, but DJ Giddens really looking like a tremendous value. So let's talk about the player here. Running back out of Kansas State. He's 21 years old, redshirt junior, former 0-star recruit, 6 foot, 212 pounds. So he's got a nice frame on him, but Marcus, he has got to be one of the smoothest runners that you're going to watch in this draft class, which is pretty impressive considering this is a really good running back class. So when I'm telling you he is a natural runner and he is just so smooth, that's a high compliment among this cohort here specifically.
Yeah, the word that kind of came to my mind when I watched him is like a slasher, right? Like he'll make one cut and gets downhill quickly. And he doesn't lose speed at all. I mean, I think he is one of the best at making that first defender miss. He's got some really good jump cuts. And he's a bigger back. I think he was 6'1". I got to, yeah. Sorry, 6 foot, 212. Ran a 4.43 at the NFL Combine. But Kate, the numbers that jump off to me: a 39-inch vertical and a 130 broad. Those are both in the 90th percentile or better. Like he is an explosive running back despite having pretty good size.
Absolutely explosive. And I think that is just what you're going to enjoy about his game. And he's got the long speed. He's got a lot to like about pretty much all aspects of his game. Let's talk about his strengths. Because he does. He has a lot of strengths here. Big back with home run hitting ability. You mentioned that 40-yard dash. But it really does translate to the tape. Like we've talked about, for example, Matthew Golden, who had a stellar 40-yard dash, but doesn't actually play to it. DJ Giddens, once he makes that first jump cut, makes that first defender miss, that speed translates to the field in a big way, especially for a back who's 6 foot and 212 pounds. He's really patient. He's got great vision, and that helps him out in a big way because when you have the ability to make those jump cuts, when you have the physical tools to have that home run hitting ability, but you have the vision to kind of project the field, it makes it really hard to stop some of these home run plays. And last but not least, he is so reliable. One fumble at KSU. That is, I think, a testament to, the type of running back that he is. I think he's got a pretty safe floor when we're projecting him at the next level. And I just think when I'm watching the tape, there's not a ton that pops out to you in terms of the run game that you're not going to like when you're watching TJ Giddens.
He's just one of my favorite running backs in this class. Now, that doesn't mean he's the best because he's not. But I think just in terms of his play style and the way Kansas State used him, a lot of gap stuff where he's having to use his vision to kind of anticipate where the hole is going to be at. There's as a runner, we'll get to some of the knocks as a receiver, but as a runner, man, he just checks every box that you would like to see, Kate.
Yeah, and at a high level, I think. So let's talk about some of the weaknesses then, because again, most of his strengths lie in his natural running ability, but he's not necessarily a power back, right?
No.
He's got really nice frame, 6 foot, 212 pounds, but he doesn't profile as a power back. He's more of a finesse guy who's going to win, making his way through the tackles with a little bit of wiggle, with those jump cuts, with that power, that long speed. Can be a bit of a long strider. So sometimes that'll show up in like these, immediate areas when you're looking at his overall burst. But again, you look at the explosive metric testing that he had at the NFL Combine, and you see that short area burst isn't actually a problem. So like maybe this can be fixed a little bit. And then we should probably talk about his abilities as a receiver, abilities as a guy in pass protection. Like that's not going to be an element of his game, especially immediately in his NFL career.
Yeah, he's just not a weapon as a receiver. Now, in fairness, Kansas State really didn't use him all that often. He had 29 receptions in 2023, went down to 21 in 2024. He's, as a receiver, Kate, he's just like the outlet dump off receiver screen. And it's fine. Like, it's passable. Now, his issues, I think, come in. He's just not a very good pass blocker right now. Most of these running backs aren't. Like, Travion Henderson is one of the only running backs I feel good about in pass pro as a rookie. He's going to need some work. And I think in an ideal situation, you're going to want to pair him with maybe a veteran that can come in and do some of the passing game stuff. Again, you can use him as a outlet receiver, but that's just not his strength. And you also mentioned the power. He's a 215-pound running back that looks like he would run with power, but doesn't really do that. He doesn't move piles. He's not great in short yardage. So a lot of it's just going to depend on your blocking. Where he wins is as a slasher, getting downhill, making guys miss. And yet there's still a lot of value in that player. And especially when it comes to fantasy football, there's a lot of value in having a player like that who can, make any run a 15, 20, 25-yard run.
Well, and I think that's probably one of his, that's his calling card, right? I think it's his ability to create. There are times where, he does kind of disappear into a pile. He's not a pile mover, but he's got the wiggle to just kind of maneuver his way through a pile. And there were so many moments watching him on tape where he kind of disappears in a pile, and then all of a sudden he's 10 yards down the field. And it's not because he is making his way, churning the legs and then he breaks free. It's because he generally just kind of maneuvers his way through that pile and then makes his way out on the other side. How is that going to translate at the next level when you've got bigger, faster, everything in the defense? I don't know. But I do know that the vision is a skill that's going to translate in a big way, and that he has the athleticism and the physical tools to continue to create plays, even when there doesn't always seem to be that play there.
I want to ask you one question before we move on, because one of the concerns that I think some people have, and I want your thoughts on this, is what did you think about his play speed? Because I think a lot of people were shocked that he ended up running a low 4.4 40-yard dash. Did you have any concerns about his play speed or top end speed when you were watching him on tape?
I didn't. I like his long speed better than I like his short speed necessarily. I think, the long stride, that can sometimes be a little bit of a problem, but I think generally speaking, his speed is good enough. And then when you pair it with the vision and the ability to just kind of naturally feel what the defenders are about to do, that I think is the ideal combination. Like, if you're not going to have elite athleticism, elite top end speed, having the vision to pair with pretty good speed is a really nice compliment. So I I don't have as many of those concerns.
Well, so here's the thing that's funny is, man, he has a lot of long runs on his tape, like a lot of long runs. Now, I just don't think he has maybe that extra gear to just pull away from like corners and safeties. But man, he can absolutely blow by linebackers and that kind of stuff where he gets into the open field way more than you would expect.
Absolutely. And I think, again, a big part of that is some of the jump cuts that we talked about, some of the just slight movements that, shake off defenders a little bit to give, an inch or two extra that maybe he wouldn't have otherwise created because of maybe that lack of top end speed. I just think there's enough tools and traits in his game that make up for that lack of high end speed. And I don't have that same concern when I'm watching him on tape.
Let's dive into the advanced analytics with DJ Giddens because I think you're going to be impressed. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. But now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Every dayers. On tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about Iowa State wide receiver Jaden Higgins, who is shooting up draft boards. So make sure you tune in for that. Okay, let's dive into the analytics. What do they have to say about DJ Giddens?
They are absurdly friendly. Let's first start with the straight up box score. Back-to-back seasons with 1,500 plus scrimmage yards at Kansas State, 8+ touchdowns. Best season to this point in terms of touchdown production came in 2023. 13 touchdowns from scrimmage, including 3 receiving touchdowns, which we've said like that's not necessarily the crux of his game. He's not a big receiver, but had a pretty solid sophomore campaign. Took a little bit of a step back in terms of the receiving production, but made up for that as a runner. Saw an improvement in terms of his yards per carry from his sophomore to junior seasons. Averaged 111.9 rushing yards per game. He was a 2024 Doak Walker Award semifinalist. And all of that production that you're going to enjoy from like a tape perspective showed up in the advanced metrics. 74th percentile PFF rushing grade, 76th percentile missed forced tackles per attempt, which we know is a great predictive stat at the next level, projecting what are these guys going to do when it comes to forcing missed tackles against pro level defenders. 90th percentile yards after contact per attempt, which I'm going to be honest, this was probably one of the more surprising stats for me and one of the more surprising percentiles because we said not necessarily a power back. 2nd percentile PFF receiving grade in 2024. We'll talk about that. 91st percentile missed forced tackles per reception. In general, this is a pretty sparklingly nice profile.
Yes.
We mentioned the lack of, fumbling issues. Like DJ Giddens, he's just a pretty clean prospect all around.
Yeah, and again, if you can get past some average receiving stuff, or in this case, some below average, and you just look at the runner and the reliability and the durability, there's a spot for that player in the NFL, right? Like you can absolutely have a long career being the slashing running back in a gap scheme. A couple of the numbers that I like to go over, we always talk about how do you perform on 1st and 10. His 1st and 10 numbers are about as good as you would expect. 94 carries, 650 yards, 6.9 yards per carry on 1st and 10 runs, which is absolutely crazy. Kate, one of my favorites is how do you perform on 2nd down? A lot of times 2nd down is when you get into these favorable situations. 7.4 yards per attempt on second down, which is unbelievable. And then another one we always like to look at is, how are you performing by quarter? Do you start off slow and get better as the game goes on? Does your game lessen as you get more touches? 5.3 yards per carry first quarter, 7.1 in the second quarter, 7.2 in the third quarter, 6.5 in the fourth quarter. He's just good all game long, and he was good every single month out of the year. Again, from an analytic standpoint, the rushing production is off the charts, and usually this is a type of running back that would go mid-second, maybe late second round, maybe top of the third. And right now, if you're looking at like consensus boards, this is like RB9, RB10, RB11, which is incredible for this class.
It is really incredible. And I do think that generally speaking, like, I don't know, where would DJ Giddens, let's say we were looking at the 2024 class, a pretty weak all around class at the running back position. Where would you have had him in your 2024 rankings? Because I think it'd be reasonably high.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brooks and Benson probably still go ahead of him, although I'm not quite sure on Benson because of the knee issues. But does he go ahead of like Blake Corum and Jalen Wright? Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about RB3.
I think RB2 to RB3 feels like the right range. So, like, for context, when we're talking about DJ Giddens as like RB10 in this class, that just shows you kind of the comparison between these 2024 and 2025 draft classes. And that's going to translate to your dynasty leagues as well in terms of the overall value that you're going to get, I think, in some of the later portions of your rookie drafts, because there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot more athleticism in this running back class than we saw in the last. The production profile is outstanding for a guy like DJ Giddens. The athleticism, like you said, the testing, the advanced metrics, a lot of these things translate to a really solidly, safe prospect, I think, at the next level. And there are plenty of landing spots where I could easily see him coming in and getting immediate work just based on how good he is as a pure running back.
And let's talk about some of those landing spots. Giddens had a 30 visit, I believe, with the Steelers. I hope that doesn't happen for my sake, but for Giddens' sake, I think that's a really good fit, right? Going into an Arthur Smith offense, you let Jalen Warren handle a lot of the passing down stuff, let him be the receiver out of the backfield, and that's your slasher. I think that makes sense. The Cowboys are an obvious fit because his former offensive coordinator, Connor Riley, is now their offensive line coach. They know him well. I think that's, in round 3, pick 76. I think that makes a lot of sense. Any other teams for you that stand out?
Broncos have shown some heavy interest in DJ Giddens. Now, Broncos could be in the mix for Ashton Genty, potentially at pick number 10. But I think there's no question that the Broncos want a running back in this class. They've shown a ton of interest in the running back position. And DJ Giddens could be, I think, an interesting fit. There aren't a ton of landing spots that I'm looking at and I'm saying, I don't love that fit. I do have one, though, that I kind of want to throw out there that maybe you'll hate, maybe you won't. But we talk about his abilities as a pure runner. And when I'm thinking about like, where could that translate really well to, I'm thinking of an offense that maybe doesn't necessarily use a ton of like designed targets for the running back position. What about the Baltimore Ravens? Because we said maybe pair him with a veteran who can maybe teach him a little bit in terms of the pass pro and working out that portion of his game. But as a pure runner, DJ Giddens could be very, very, very intriguing right next to Lamar Jackson, who's the best pure running quarterback that we have in the game right now.
And that just feels like such a Baltimore pick, right? Baltimore's got pick 91, 129, 136. I think it's reasonable to assume that he goes somewhere in that range, right? Mm-hmm. Like they brought back Justice Hill for another year. Justice Hill does a lot of the receiving stuff anyways, and a lot of pass blocking. And he's just the eventual replacement for Derrick Henry after a year or two. Yeah, here's the only issue that I have with DJ Giddens. I think he's going to be somebody who's available in round 3K, or a team that has a running back is just going to be like, you know what, he's such a good value. We can't pass him up. I'll give you an example. Like, what if he goes to the Bengals at pick 81 and they're like, okay, this is the perfect guy to pair with Chase Brown. He can be our, first and second down back, and let's let Brown be the guy we get into the open field and I'm passing down stuff. I just won't be surprised if a team like that, or the Chargers at 86, or even someone like Jacksonville, who has 2 running backs on their team already, but probably are going to be moving on from Travis Etienne soon. He's too good of a player to get to day 3 is what I'm saying. And that could make his landing spot murky.
It could. It almost reminds me of for example, when the Jets took Braylon Allen, and you kind of looked at the pick and I thought, okay, like Braylon Allen was this really nice value, I think, at that point in the draft, but obviously they had this heavy investment in Breece Hall. It felt like a disappointment for the Braylon Allen managers because you knew the upside could be kind of tremendous there in the right circumstance. But there's a blockage there that's not going to lend itself to, immediate pathway for a 3-down skill set, but he's quite frankly not ready for a 3-down skill set. So, having that opportunity to acclimate to the league, maybe through year 1, I think could be huge. But again, as a pure runner, he's one of my favorite guys in this draft.
Let's give you some of our favorite comps for DJ Giddens and discuss his current dynasty value next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go between dining out, shopping, entertainment, buying football cards? It's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. I started using Monarch Money a couple months ago, and I realized how much money I was spending on useless stuff, like things that just didn't matter. But now I am budgeting smarter and I'm saving more. Take control of your finances using Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day, and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Kate, player comps, my favorite part of the show. Did Giddens remind you of anybody when you were watching his tape?
No, but I know you have a very interesting comp, so let's hear it.
So it's not 1-for-1 because there's never such thing as a 1-for-1 comp, right? But there was another running back that came out a few years ago who was 6 foot, 210 pounds, that ran kind of a middling 40, but was extremely explosive and had this kind of slashing running style. And that's Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard at 6 foot, 210, ran a 4.5 240. But you watch this tape and it was just big play after big play after big play. And he has this size that you would expect to be like, hey, this is a guy that can move some piles and be a good short yardage runner. And that wasn't the case. He just happened to be kind of a high cut running back that was really good in the open field. And that's what I see with Giddens. Now, I think Pollard was a better receiver coming out.
Yes, much
because
better.
Pollard was a slot receiver at Memphis before kind of transitioning to running back. But one of the knocks on Pollard early in his career is he can't be an every down running back because we don't trust him in pass pro. He's just got to be a change of pace guy. And it took all of about one season to realize, like, hey, he's just an awesome running back. Let's get him touches. And I feel the same way about Giddens. Like, the speed and the explosiveness is there. Maybe not the top end speed that we're hoping for, but man, in the right scheme and in the right offense, I can be a really good player.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of upside to DJ Giddens' game, and let's talk about his dynasty value. So we've mentioned, his sort of consensus ranking. Do you have his consensus ranking like on the current big board?
I do. Right now it's 116 overall.
116 overall. Okay. And let's look at his value in Dynasty rookie drafts, which we do have a batch of ADP here for the month of March. So again, not the most recent, but pretty up to date. DJ Giddens, RB12
It's
in this
ridiculous.
class. That is behind Cam Scadaboo, Devin Neal, Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon, Bashal Tootin. Like the standing as RB11 in this group, I cannot imagine that come draft day he's going to be this low. I think he's closer to RB6 than RB12.
And the good news is right now, Kate, you can get him if you're doing rookie drafts now, which I know there are some leagues out there that do their drafts now. You can get him at the bottom of round 2, top of round 3. And that's just wild, right? If you're one of these teams that's drafting, let's say at pick 10, right? And you have pick, 110, 210, and you want to take a Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland with that pick because you like the depth of the running back class. I think Giddens is the perfect running back to target at the end of round 2 because he's such a productive running back. He's got the athleticism. He's got the explosiveness. And while I think he's going in round 3 of the NFL draft, just to be clear, that's where I think he goes. He might fall to the top of round 4, but if he goes at pick 115, are you really going to care all that much, Kate? Because the moment he gets on the field, he's going to look awesome. I don't know if going at pick 85 compared to 115 is all that big of a deal, especially in this class.
No, I have him firmly entrenched in round 3 here. And I do think that, again, sort of the context of the draft class is important when we're looking at draft position for some of these prospects, because just due to the sheer wealth of talent at the position in this class. And I do think that, generally speaking, when we're looking at tiers, obviously you have your Ashton Genty, you have your Amarian Hampton at the top. There are a few like consensus sort of top 4 running backs, I would say. And then I feel like there's a tier break. And then I feel like the ranks for the rest of these running backs can be all over the place, just depending on the way the wind is blowing on any given day. So I do think that that's sort of important context when we look at the final draft position of any of the running backs in this range, is that it's going to, I think, depend a lot on team needs. I think it's going to depend a lot because when you're looking at the physical traits of this class, again, much, much deeper, much better, pure running back prospects in this class than we had in last. So comparing, the draft position, I think, is just going to be a little bit harder here in 2025. Well,
yes, you mentioned the landing spot's going to matter. I do think the top 5 running backs, and you can mix them up depending how you want, are pretty clear. And then after that, it's that tier that you mentioned. But I look at somebody like Bashal Tootin from Virginia Tech, who was extremely fast, but had, I think, 12 fumbles over the last 2 years. Coaches are going to hate that, where Giddens has 1 over the last 2, right? Like the reliability is going to be what gets Giddens on the field faster. And the fact that Giddens is going several spots behind Tootin, and someone like Ollie Gordon, who's got, I think his consensus board ranking is in like the 180s right now. I think Giddens is going to be a riser, but this is somebody, just to kind of tie this up, this is somebody I want to target in my leagues because I think he's going to be a part of a committee in year 1. And then by year 2, he's going to be a starter. But I will say this, I think there are a couple situations out there where he could be a day 1 starter on the right team. And that's where we get really excited. And we've mentioned some of the spots. Like I think Dallas is the obvious one. I think Pittsburgh, maybe he could be the leader in the backfield there. Where he lands is going to determine his ceiling, but I think the floor is incredibly high.
Absolutely. And that's what makes me so excited about DJ Giddens.
Yes, we love him. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out tomorrow's show when we're previewing Jaden Higgins, wide receiver from Iowa State. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.